The vacuum's hum was the only sound left in the building. It was 2:47 a.m., and my reflection in the glass wall looked more like a ghost than a man. The office on the 21st floor of Harrington & Cole Investments smelled like lemon polish and burnt coffee, the scent of other people's success. I moved from desk to desk, emptying trash bins full of crumpled reports and half-eaten salads. Some nights I'd catch a glimpse of my own hands under the fluorescent light, rough, calloused, cracked from chemicals and cold water. I used to shake hands with clients once. Now I just wiped their fingerprints off glass tables. The city outside glittered like a universe I didn't belong to anymore. People down there were probably still awake, laughing in bars, closing million-dollar deals, falling in love, while I scrubbed gum off conference room chairs for $13 an hour. The last cleaner had quit last week, so I was pulling double shifts. The supervisor said it was temporary. That word stopped meaning anything years ago. I bent to grab a trash can near the CEO's office when something caught my eye under the desk. A black leather wallet, thick, worn, but expensive. I picked it up. It felt heavy in my hand. $10,000. That was 4 months' rent. 3 months of catching up on bills. Maybe a new start. I sat down in the CEO's chair without meaning to, staring at the cash like it might burn through my fingers. There was a driver's license tucked behind a platinum card. Name, Elliot Carson. Address, 1247 Ridgeview Drive, Crestmont. The photo showed a man in his 50s, smiling in that confident, effortless way people do when life never made them kneel. I'd cleaned this office every night for 6 months, and I'd never seen that name on a desk. He wasn't an employee here, maybe a client, maybe one of those people who came in for late-night meetings and left with more money than I'd make in a lifetime. I flipped through the wallet again, receipts from restaurants I'd never afford, a gold business card embossed with his initials. Then behind the cash, an old photograph. 2 men shaking hands in front of a construction site. The man on the left, younger, bearded, looked like me. I leaned closer, my pulse racing, because it was me. 10 years younger, cleaner haircut, wearing my old company jacket. Miller Contracting Group. The same company I'd lost when my partner betrayed me and left me bankrupt. I turned the photo over, written in black ink, to the man who gave me my first shot, Elliot. My throat went dry. I remembered him. He'd been a quiet kid on one of my job sites 15 years ago. Started as a day laborer, saved every dollar, and told me once he wanted to build something real someday. I'd given him his first steady job. Back then, he'd barely owned a car. And now, he had a wallet worth more than everything I owned combined. I sat there in the dark, the city lights flickering on the glass walls around me, the money burning in my hand. Part of me, the part that had slept in my car for 2 months last winter, whispered, "No one would know, just take it, you deserve it." Another part, quieter but heavier, whispered, "He remembered you once. Maybe you should remember him too." I stared at that photo again, at the version of me who still believed in people, in loyalty, in fairness, and I realized how far I'd fallen. I looked out the window, down at the world I'd once been part of, and said out loud to no one, "What the hell are you doing, Daniel?" The answer came from the reflection staring back. Tired eyes, cracked hands. A man with nothing left but a few choices that still mattered. I took one last look at the cash, slipped the photo back in, and closed the wallet. That address, 1247 Ridgeview Drive, was burned into my brain. By the time I finished cleaning, dawn was bleeding into the skyline. I clocked out, shoved my mop into the storage closet, and walked to the parking lot where my old Ford was waiting. I sat behind the wheel, gripping the wallet on my lap, knowing whatever I decided next would change everything. And somehow, I already knew I wasn't going home. The streets were almost empty when I pulled out of the parking lot. The early dawn light made the asphalt shimmer like wet steel. My old Ford coughed awake, rattling like it wanted to die, but it kept moving, kind of like me. The heater barely worked, so I cracked the window and let the cold air bite my face. The wallet sat on the passenger seat, black leather glinting faintly under the dashboard light. $10,000. I could have turned the car around right then and paid off every bill waiting in that small apartment of mine. But my gut wouldn't let me. Something about that photo, about seeing my own younger self smiling like life still made sense, had burned through every selfish thought I had. I drove past empty storefronts and silent intersections, thinking about the man I used to be. I remembered my company, Miller Contracting Group. Back then, I thought hard work was enough to make you bulletproof. I built homes, schools, community centers, even a few offices like the one I now cleaned. I hired local guys who needed a chance. That's how I met Elliot Carson. He was 21, skinny, quiet, hands blistered from work. But his eyes had that same spark I once had. I liked him. He showed up early, stayed late, never complained. He told me once he wanted to build something. Of his own one day, White said, "You built this company from nothing. I want to do that too." I told him he would if he stayed honest. But I wasn't ready for how life was about to gut me. My partner, Rick, was the kind of man who smiled while he cut your throat. He forged invoices, pocketed money, and when the tax audits came, he disappeared. I lost everything, and my company, my credit, my name. Clients blamed me. I spent months fighting lawsuits I couldn't afford. Then my wife left. She said she couldn't live with a man who failed. Those words never left me. I still hear them some nights, between the hum of the vacuum and the buzz of the lights. That was 6 years ago. Since then, I've been living paycheck to paycheck, cleaning the same kind of offices I used to own. Maybe this was karma. Maybe this was how life reminded me of the ladder I'd once fallen from. By the time I reached Ridgeview Drive, the sun was fully up. The neighborhood looked like a different planet. Wide driveways, green lawns, cars that cost more than my entire past. House number 1247 stood at the end of a curved street, a modern mansion of glass and stone, the kind of place where success didn't whisper, it screamed. I parked at the curb and sat there for a moment, heart pounding. I thought about just sliding the wallet into the mailbox and leaving. No conversation, no awkwardness, no explaining how the man who once gave him a job now scrubbed floors for a living. But something inside me, pride, guilt, curiosity, made me step out of the car anyway. The front door had a security camera and one of those smart doorbells. I pressed it. My reflection stared back at me through the lens. Messy hair, work uniform, exhaustion written all over my face. Few seconds later, the speaker crackled. Yes, the voice was calm, firm, older, but familiar. I cleared my throat. Hi, my name's Daniel Miller. I found something last night at the Harrington and Cole offices. It belongs to an Elliot Carson. Silence. Then, one moment. The door clicked and a tall man appeared behind the glass. Silver hair, still fit, wearing a dark sweater and jeans. His face had aged, but those eyes were the same. He looked at me for a long second, before opening the door fully. "Daniel," he said, disbelief softening his tone. "Daniel Miller from Miller Contracting?" I tried to smile. "Guess so. What's left of him anyway?" He stared, then broke into a grin. "You're kidding me. I haven't seen you in what, 15 years? "More like 16, I said. "You used to haul bricks for me. You had that old blue pickup." He laughed quietly. "God, I did. Still remember the smell of diesel and cheap coffee. Come in, come in." I hesitated. "Actually, I just came to return this." I held out the wallet. "Found it at the office last night." He looked surprised. "You clean there?" I nodded. "Yeah, temporary gig." He took the wallet, opened it, saw everything inside untouched. "You didn't take anything?" I shook my head. "Not mine to take." Elliot's smile faded into something softer, almost sad. "Daniel, you don't know what this means. That wallet. I thought I lost it downtown yesterday. I was heading to sign a merger deal worth 8 figures. If I hadn't found it..." He stopped, looking at me like he was seeing the ghost of his own past. "You know," he said slowly, "if it wasn't for you, I'd still be hauling bricks. You gave me my first paycheck. You told me I had what it takes. That meant more than money back then." I tried to shrug it off. "You did all the work, Elliot. I just gave you a job. He shook his head. No, you gave me belief. He looked around his house, then back at me. I built this company remembering the way you ran yours. Honest, fair, decent. I always said if I ever saw you again, I'd thank you properly. I smiled faintly. Well, consider this your chance. He laughed softly, then his expression turned thoughtful. You busy right now? Not really, I said. Come in, he said again. We've got a lot to catch up on. I followed. Him through glass doors into a home that smelled like new wood and expensive taste. High ceilings, sunlight spilling across marble floors, the kind of place I once dreamed of building for clients. He poured us coffee. So, tell me, Daniel, what the hell happened to you? I looked into the dark coffee swirling in my cup, and for a moment, I didn't have an answer that didn't sound like failure. I stared into the coffee like it could give me courage. It had been years since anyone asked me what happened. Most people just assumed. Loser, failure, guy who couldn't handle success. But sitting in Elliot's mansion, surrounded by marble, floors and framed magazine covers with his face on them, the truth tasted heavier than ever. It's a long story, I said finally. He leaned back, smiling faintly. We've got time. I took a slow breath. After you left my crew, things were good for a while. We were expanding fast, got contracts all over the city. My partner, Rick, handled the paperwork. I handled the people. I trusted him like a brother. Big mistake. Elliot's eyes narrowed. What did he do? He started siphoning money out of company accounts, I said. Fake invoices, ghost projects, you name it. When the IRS came, his signature wasn't on anything. Mine was. Jesus, Elliot muttered. Yeah, they froze my accounts, seized my assets. Everything I'd built, gone overnight. I spent the next 2 years trying to clear my name. Couldn't afford the lawyers, couldn't fight back. Rick disappeared, and then I stopped, my throat tightening. My wife left, said I was cursed, said I'd dragged her life down. Took my son with her. Elliot's expression softened. Daniel, I don't blame her, I said quietly. When you lose everything, you stop being someone people recognize. I started drinking for a while, then stopped because I couldn't afford it. Ended up cleaning offices, places just like yours, just to survive. Been at it 6 years now. He stared at me for a long time, the silence stretching heavy between us. Then he spoke. You know, it's strange. I always told people about you, about how you gave me my start, how you ran your business with more integrity than anyone I've ever met. You were the reason I wanted to build something real. And now here you are, sitting across from me as if life wanted to come full circle. I tried to laugh. Full circle or a bad joke? He smiled slightly. Maybe both. We sat there for a minute, just the faint hum of the heater filling the space. His house was warm, bright, a world away from the cold apartment I'd left a few hours earlier. Then he asked quietly, Do you ever miss it? Building? Every day, I said without thinking. The smell of fresh lumber, the sound of drills, the way a site feels alive when you're shaping something out of nothing. That was my life. Cleaning floors and its survival, building something that was living. Elliot nodded slowly. I get that, but maybe it's not too late. I looked up, unsure if I'd heard him right. What do you mean? He leaned forward. I've got a new project breaking ground next month. A community development on the east side. 50 houses, a school, 2 parks. I'm investing big into it. But I've been looking for someone who understands what that kind of work means. Someone who knows it's not just bricks and wood. It's purpose. That's what you taught me back then. My chest tightened. Elliot, I appreciate that, but I'm not that guy anymore. I don't even have a contractor's license. My credit's shot. I don't have the money or the team to... He interrupted softly. I'm not offering a job, Daniel. I'm offering a partnership. The words hit me like a shockwave. A partnership? He nodded. You know the business. You know people. You built me once. Maybe it's time I help rebuild you. I stared at him, completely thrown. You don't even know if I can still do it. He smiled faintly. I know you can. I watched you build something out of dust when you were half my age. You just need a chance again. It felt surreal, like my life had been running in gray for so long that I'd forgotten what color looked like. Why me, Elliot? You could hire anyone. He looked down, thoughtful. Because once, when I was broke, you gave me work when no one else would. I never forgot that. Maybe this is how I pay it back. For a long moment I couldn't speak. My throat burned, my hands trembled slightly around the cup. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said. I let out a shaky laugh. You make it sound so simple. Ooh, it is simple, he said. You come on board. I'll handle the money, the permits, the paperwork. You run the ground team, train the guys, do what you do best. The name on the project will be ours. Carson and Miller Development. Hearing my name again, attached to something real, made my chest ache. I hadn't heard anyone say Miller Construction in years. He stood and walked over to a framed photo on the wall. It was of him, younger, standing beside a half-finished home. My company's old logo was on the trailer in the background. You built the foundation I stand on, he said quietly. Time I help you build yours again. I exhaled slowly, my voice low. You sure about this? He smiled. Absolutely. And there's something else. He walked into another room and came back holding a folder. This is the Ridgeview project. Groundbreaking's in 6 weeks. I want you to oversee the first phase. Full salary. Shares in the development, and if you still have that old spark, I'll make you managing partner. I opened the folder, scanning the plans, blueprints, budgets, signatures. It was real. It was huge. My eyes blurred for a second. Elliot, I don't know what to say. He put a hand on my shoulder. Say thank you by showing up. Be the man you were always meant to be. I nodded, still processing everything. I'll need to get my license reinstated. Find some old contacts. He grinned. Then get started. Because this time, Daniel, no one's taking it from you. Something in me woke up that morning. For the first time in years, I felt alive. As I drove home, the city didn't look as cold anymore. The sun caught the skyline, and I realized sometimes life doesn't reward the rich or the clever or the lucky. Sometimes it just waits for you to do the right thing, and then circles back when you least expect it. But fate wasn't done with me yet. The name on the final page of that blueprint, it wasn't just Elliot's signature. It was someone else's too. A name I hadn't seen in years, Rick Saunders. For 3 days, I barely slept. I kept going over the contract Elliot gave me. Every line, every clause. My name was there in ink on a partnership deal worth more than I'd seen in my entire life. But every time I turned the page, my eyes landed on that one name like a stain that wouldn't fade. Rick Saunders. The man who'd gutted my business, stolen my reputation, and walked away untouched. Now he was listed as a subcontractor for the Ridgeview project. A silent investor, through one of his shell companies. I stared at it so long the letters stopped looking like words and started feeling like scars. The first time I saw him again was at the site orientation. The Ridgeview land stretched across 50 acres of raw, uneven dirt. The kind of open space that smelled like possibility. Construction trailers lined the edges, with crews in hard hats milling around, waiting for instructions. And there he was, Rick, stepping out of a black Escalade like nothing had changed. Perfect suit, new Rolex, same smug grin. He was older now, hair thinner, but that arrogance? Untouched. He spotted me before I could turn away. Well, I'll be damned, he said, walking over, voice slick as oil. Danny Miller. Didn't think I'd see you outside a janitor's closet. The words hit like a slap. The men around us shifted uncomfortably. Elliot, standing nearby, glanced at me, confused. I forced a thin smile. Guess life's full of surprises. Rick laughed, adjusting his cufflinks. You working security or something? Elliot stepped forward before I could answer. He's not security. He's my partner. The smirk froze on Rick's face. Your what? Partner, Elliot repeated, his tone calm but sharp. Daniel's running this project with me. You'll be reporting your progress to him. For a second, Rick's face twisted, the mask cracking just slightly. Then he laughed again, forced and hollow. Well, isn't that something? I just nodded, my jaw tight. Yeah, it is. He didn't say another word, just turned and walked off toward his car, his shoulders stiff. But that moment, that look in his eyes, It gave me something I hadn't felt in years: control. After the meeting, Elliot clapped my shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied, but I wasn't. I hadn't been okay since the day Rick walked out of my office with my company's keys and left me drowning in debt. Now fate had dropped him right in front of me again, and I didn't know if it was a test or a trap. That night, I sat alone in my apartment with the contract spread across my table. I could call the state board, dig into his company, expose his fraud. I knew how, but something in me hesitated. This was my second chance. Did I really want to waste it chasing the ghost that ruined me? Still, the thought wouldn't leave. Revenge had a smell, and once it's in your lungs, you can't breathe anything else. The next day at the site, I threw myself into work. I was back in my element, marking layouts, checking soil density reports, talking to foremen. The rhythm came back like muscle memory. But then, late afternoon, I found Rick again, standing near the office trailer, laughing with two suppliers. I caught fragments of his conversation. "Yeah, the budget's inflated. Elliot doesn't even know. The guy trusts me too much. It's all in the numbers, easy money." The anger hit fast, hot. Same scam, new disguise. He hadn't changed at all. I waited until the others left, then walked up behind him. "Still playing the same games, huh?" He turned, that fake smile fading. "What's your problem?" "My problem is you," I said, my voice low but steady. "You cost me everything once." "Not this time," he sneered. "Please, you think you can stop me? I'm too deep in this project already. Elliot needs my suppliers, my funding. You blow this up, you lose everything again." He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Some men just aren't meant to climb back up, Danny. You're one of them." And then he walked off, leaving those words to rot in the air. That night, I couldn't shake his voice from my head. I opened my laptop, an old one that barely worked, and started digging. Company records, invoices, bank filings. It was all there if you knew where to look. Shell accounts, inflated vendor bills, phantom subcontractors. The same playbook he used to destroy me. At midnight, I sat back, staring at the screen. I could expose him. One email to Elliot, one phone call to the board, and Rick's empire would crumble. But the risk? Massive. If it turned into a scandal, the whole project could collapse. I'd lose my partnership before it even began. For the next few days, I couldn't decide what to do. I showed up at the site, gave orders, checked progress, but inside, the war kept burning. Elliot trusted me completely. He called me brother, and I couldn't tell him that his own investor was the devil I'd spent a decade trying to forget. One evening, as we stood watching the sunset over the half-graded land, Elliot said, "You know, I haven't felt this alive since I started my first company. Working beside you again. It feels right." I forced a nod. "Yeah, feels right." He looked at me for a moment, studying my face. "You've got something on your mind," I almost told him right there. But then I saw the excitement in his eyes, the hope, and I swallowed it. "Just thinking about the next phase," I said. He smiled. "Good, because this time, Daniel, it's all going to work." But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. Not until I faced the ghost standing in my way. 2 nights later, I drove across town to an address I'd found buried in the corporate filings. Rick's penthouse. From the street, it looked untouchable. Glass walls, city lights reflected in every surface. I parked across the road, staring up at it, hands gripping the wheel. For years, I'd dreamed of this moment, confronting him, making him see what he'd done. But now that I was here, I wasn't sure what revenge would fix. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Elliot. "Need to talk, urgent, call me as soon as you get this." My stomach dropped. I called him immediately. "Elliot, what's wrong?" His voice came through tight, rushed. "Daniel, did you authorize a $200,000 transfer from the Ridgeview Fund yesterday?" My pulse spiked. "What? No, of course not." "Then we've got a problem," he said. "The money's gone. And the account it went to? It's under your name." I froze, blood turning cold. "What do you mean, under my name?" "I mean," he said, his voice low, "someone's setting you up again." My hands were shaking when I ended the call. The streetlights blurred against the windshield, city sounds fading into a dull hum. I'd spent years rebuilding what Rick destroyed, brick by brick, choice by choice. And now someone had just ripped the floor out from under me again. I sat there for a long time, the phone still pressed to my ear even though the line had gone silent, thinking of every time life had kicked me when I was finally learning to stand. Only one person knew enough about my finances, my habits, my past, to pull something like this off. Rick. By the time I got to Elliot's condo, it was past midnight. He was waiting in the lobby, eyes heavy but alert, laptop tucked under his arm. We didn't say much as we rode the elevator up. The room lights glowed soft and gold against the darkness outside. He set the laptop on the counter and spun it toward me. "Look," he said, there it was, the transfer record. 200,000 gone. The routing info, the signature, the authorizing ID, all under my name. But I hadn't signed a thing. "This isn't me," I said, my throat dry. "You know I wouldn't do this." "I believe you," Elliot said quietly. "But the board won't. They're already asking questions." "How did they even get my credentials?" He exhaled. "You gave Rick access to the shared drive last week. Remember?" I closed my eyes. I did. He'd asked for temporary access to pull a few supplier invoices. I thought nothing of it. "I can fix this," I said, trying to sound certain even as fear crawled through my chest. "How?" "I know his methods. If he's behind this, he left a trail. He always does." I spent the next 20 hours buried in data, cross-checking account histories, metadata, file timestamps. I barely ate, didn't sleep. Every click of the mouse was a heartbeat closer to either saving my name or losing everything all over again. By dawn, I found it. An IP log showing 2 logins under my account, one from my home network, the other from an address in Midtown. Rick's corporate suite. I sent the evidence to Elliot with a single line. "I told you it wasn't me," he called me immediately. "You sure about this?" "Positive. It's him. He's using me as a scapegoat." There was silence on the line, then Elliot said, "Then let's hit back. But we do it smart." He looped in his legal team, froze the project funds, and scheduled an emergency meeting with the board. But before it could happen, Rick made his move. I showed up at Ridgeview that afternoon, the tension thick enough to choke on. Rick was there already, pacing near the trailers, his expression the picture of controlled outrage. When he saw me, he smiled like a man watching a slow-motion car crash. "Bold move," he said, "trying to pin your theft on me. You always were good at playing the victim." I stepped closer, close enough to smell the cologne he probably sprayed on like armor. "I have proof, Rick, digital footprints, IP logs." "You left your signature all over it," he chuckled, shaking his head. "You think anyone's going to believe that? Elliot's board has my name carved into their golf clubs. You're the ex-janitor who just happened to land a miracle partnership. You're nothing but a charity project. Then why are you nervous?" His smile wavered for just a second. I saw it, the flicker of doubt. Before I could press further, Elliot pulled up, stepping out of his SUV. His expression was unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, motioning us both toward the trailer. Inside, 3 people waited, 2 from the board and 1 auditor. The air felt cold and official. Elliot folded his arms. "I've reviewed both of your statements," he began, "and the audit logs." He turned to me first. "Daniel, you said Rick accessed your credentials without permission." "Yes," I said, steady. "And I have evidence, timestamps, IPs, file trails." Rick scoffed. "All fabricated." "He's desperate," Elliot lifted a hand. "Enough." He looked between us, then turned the laptop toward Rick. "You might want to explain this." On the screen was a series of recorded keystrokes, traced from a background process Elliot's IT team had activated days ago for compliance testing. The footage showed Rick's login at 2:17 a.m., routing the transfer through a masked account. His face was visible in the reflection of the monitor. The room went dead silent. Elliot's voice was low, almost disappointed. "You should have known better, Rick. You don't scam family." Rick's jaw tightened. "You can't prove intent." The auditor closed her file. "We can, and we will." Rick's confidence cracked right there. He stammered something about misunderstandings, about business flexibility, but it was over. Security escorted him out while I stood frozen, a decade of buried anger clawing its way to the surface. When the door closed, Elliot looked at me. "You want to press charges?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I just want him gone." Elliot nodded. "Then he's gone." The relief hit hard and strange. I'd spent so long dreaming about revenge that when it finally came, It felt hollow. There was no victory dance, no satisfaction, just a quiet exhaustion, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even notice anymore. Later that night, as I walked the empty Ridgeview site, I saw the city lights flickering beyond the horizon. The wind smelled like dust and metal, like things being built again. My life for once wasn't falling apart. It was standing on its own feet. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, warm but formal. Mr. Miller? This is Angela Park from the Greenwood Foundation. Are you available to discuss a possible collaboration? Foundation? I asked. I think you've got the wrong guy. No, sir, she said. We received your contact from Mr. Elliot Harris. He mentioned your story and your integrity. We'd like to talk about you heading our new community rebuild initiative. Full funding, full control. I blinked at the darkness around me. You're serious? Completely. As the call ended, I looked up at the half-finished framework of Ridgeview. For the first time in years, it wasn't just steel and dirt I was looking at. It was proof. Proof that life could still surprise you in the best ways, even after it had burned you to the ground. And somewhere deep down, I could hear my younger self whisper, "You made it." The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds of my small apartment, the same one I'd kept for years even after my business started doing well. I stood by the window holding my coffee, watching the city stir awake beneath me. My phone buzzed again, an email from Angela Park. Subject line, Greenwood Foundation Partnership Proposal. Attached were documents with figures I'd only seen in the dreams of men who never gave up. Millions in funding, nationwide expansion potential, and my name at the top as project director. I laughed quietly, almost in disbelief. Just months ago, I was cleaning office floors and counting coins for gas. Now, a foundation was offering me control of a multi-million-dollar rebuild program. Life was strange. How it could twist the knife, then hand you the blade and let you carve something new. I called Angela that afternoon. Her tone was steady but kind, the kind of professional warmth that hides genuine respect. Mr. Miller, Elliot spoke highly of your work. He said you build from nothing, and that's exactly the kind of person we want leading this. I don't have a degree, I said, a little embarrassed. Or a big name firm, I just work hard. She chuckled softly. Sometimes that's the best credential there is. Over the next few weeks, I was drawn into meetings I'd once only cleaned the floors of. Boardrooms overlooking the skyline. People in tailored suits taking notes while I spoke about community spaces and affordable housing. It was surreal, almost cinematic. But what hit me hardest wasn't the success itself. It was realizing how many nights, years back, I'd convinced myself I'd never escape that janitor's closet. I carried that image with me, the mop bucket, the echo of my own footsteps in an empty hallway, as a reminder of who I really was beneath all this shine. Elliot became more like a brother than a business partner. One evening, after another long planning session, he looked at me and said, "You know, I never told you why I left finance." I raised a brow. "Why?" He sighed. "Because I saw too many people lose their souls chasing numbers. But you reminded me what purpose looks like. That's why I trusted you from day one." I nodded, humbled. "You trusted a guy who used to scrub your office floors." "Exactly," he said with a grin. "Because you never pretended to be more than that. You just showed up and did the work." Months passed. The Greenwood Project launched its first site on the same lot where I once found that wallet. It felt poetic, like fate had decided to close the circle right where it began. Cameras flashed, local papers ran the story. From janitor to builder, the man who cleaned his way to the top. It was embarrassing at first, reading it, but also grounding. My mom cried when she saw the article. I flew her out for the ribbon cutting, watched her walk through the crowd with tears in her eyes, whispering, "Your father would have been proud." But success has a strange echo. It pulls people from your past out of the shadows. One night after the event, I got a message on LinkedIn. The name stopped me cold, Rick Tanner. The message was short. "You proved me wrong. Maybe I needed that. I'm starting over, just wanted to say congrats." I stared at it for a long time. I could have ignored him, could have cursed him, blocked him, erased his name from my life forever. But I didn't. Instead, I typed back, "We both started over. Hope you build something good this time." And just like that, the anger I'd carried for years lifted. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you, I realized. It's the last chain you break on your way out of the fire. That night, I went back to the construction site after everyone had left. The moon hung low over the steel frames, painting everything silver and still. I walked to the edge of the foundation and sat down, hands rough with years of labor, heart steady for the first time in forever. I thought about that night I found the wallet, the choice to return it, the knock on Elliot's door, the stranger who'd become my brother. All of it, every hard turn, every betrayal, every scar had led me here. I whispered to myself, sometimes the richest thing you find isn't money. The city hummed quietly around me, a living thing. And in that moment, I understood the full weight of what fate had done. It didn't hand me luck, it handed me tests. And every test I passed wasn't to prove I was good, but to prepare me to be ready when the right door finally opened. The man who once cleaned offices now signed the contracts that built them. The janitor became the architect, not just of buildings, but of his own life. A year later, the Greenwood project had become more than just a business. It was a symbol, a lifeline for men who'd fallen through the cracks the way I once did. We weren't just building offices and homes, we were rebuilding people. Every night before heading home, I'd walk through our newest site, a half-finished office complex gleaming under floodlights. The smell of fresh cement and sawdust always brought me back to that janitor closet, that first night when I'd found the wallet. Now I carried blueprints instead of mops. My name was etched on the company's glass door. Sometimes when I passed the janitorial staff, I made sure to greet them properly, by name. Nobody had ever done that for me back then. One of my newest workers, Luis, reminded me of the man I'd been, quiet, sharp, and hungry for a break. He was young, maybe 23, but his eyes had already seen too much. I'd found him sleeping in his car behind the warehouse 2 months ago and hired him on the spot. One night, I caught him staying late, scrubbing tools long after the shift ended. "Luis," I said, stepping into the workshop, "what are you still doing here, man? Go home. You've done enough for today." He hesitated, wiping his hands on a rag. "Just don't want to mess this up. If I stop working, feels like it could all disappear." I smiled, not out of pity but recognition. I know that feeling. I used to clean these same kinds of buildings. He looked up, surprised. "You? Come on, boss." "Yeah," I said quietly. "Right here in this city. I was a janitor. One night I found a wallet with $10,000 in it." Luis blinked. "What did you do?" "I gave it back," I said. Didn't expect anything from it, but that choice changed everything. Because that's how you build a life, Luis. One right choice at a time, even when nobody's watching. He nodded slowly, something shifting behind his eyes. "Thanks, Mr. Reed. I needed to hear that." "Don't thank me," I said. "Just remember, no one stays where they are forever. Keep your head down, do the right thing, and life will notice." 6 months later, I was invited to speak at a business summit in Chicago. Me, the man who once couldn't afford a clean shirt. When I stood before that crowd of polished executives, I started the way I always did. I used to clean your offices at night. There were polite chuckles. They thought I was joking. Then I told them about the wallet, about Elliot Hartman, the man behind the address, and how he didn't just give me a job, but a purpose, how one act of honesty had rewritten my life. By the time I finished, the room had gone silent. When the applause finally came, it wasn't for me. It was for what honesty still meant in a world that had forgotten it. Afterward, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "My father was a janitor too," she said. "He always told me to do the right thing, even when no one's looking. Thank you for proving he was right." That night, I sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the city lights, a skyline that used to feel like another planet. My phone buzzed. It was Elliot. "We did good today, brother. Greenwood is changing lives." I smiled. "It's not us," I texted back. It's the people who still believe good things can start from hard places. The next morning, I drove to visit my mother. She was sitting in her favorite diner booth, waiting with coffee already poured for me. When I walked in, her eyes softened. "You've become the man your father always hoped you'd be," she said quietly. That hit harder than anything else. My father had died before he could see me rise again. For years, I'd carried the guilt of not being the son he'd believed in. But now, sitting there with my mother's hands over mine, I finally felt like I'd earned that peace. That evening, I drove through the old part of town. Past the building where it all began, the office I used to clean. It had been renovated, the name on the door replaced, but the small janitor's closet window was still there. I parked across the street and stared at my reflection in the glass. Older now, calmer, still carrying the quiet of those nights. "Thank you," I whispered, "to the man I used to be, to the hunger that never killed me, to the wallet that found me when I was lost." Just as I turned to leave, my phone rang. Luis. "Hey, boss," he said, nervous but excited. "I got approved for that construction license. I just wanted to say, you changed my life." I looked back at that old building, at the window where my story began. "No, Luis," I said. "You changed it. I just handed you the blueprints." He laughed, a little choked up. "You really believe that?" "I don't believe it," I said. "I know it." When I hung up, I stood there for a moment longer, watching the city glow under the orange dusk. Those same towers I used to clean now shimmered like reminders of everything I'd survived. Because sometimes, the smallest act of good doesn't just change your life, it rewrites the whole universe around you. That night, as I drove home under the soft hum of the highway lights, I whispered the truth I'd learned too late but lived to understand. The night I found that wallet, I thought I was lucky. Turns out I was finally ready.